Hey, this is Kev with Blender Binge, back with another tutorial for you. Today we're going to be making a cool sci-fi wormhole effect like you've seen in probably Star Wars or Sliders or Stargate or Star Trek or a whole bunch of different VJ videos and 80s stuff. So we're going to make this really fast and cool. So the first thing I need to do is get a camera and have it follow through a tunnel. So we're going to make the tunnel and we're going to attach the camera into the tunnel. So the first thing we do is we're going to add a circle. And I'm going to hit S and I'm going to scale up the circle a bit, make it pretty big, zoom out a little bit. And now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the camera to the circle. To do that, first thing I have to do is the camera's out here in the middle of nowhere. Thank you very much, Blender. This is great, but it's not working for me for this. So we're going to take this and we're going to hit Alt R to rotate it down and clear out the rotation, and then Alt G is going to clear out the location. Puts that right in the middle. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach that to the curve so that it goes around and around and around. So the first thing I'm going to do for that is, with the camera selected, I'm going to go over here to Object Constraints, Add Object Constraint, go to Follow Path. I'm going to say Target will be my Bezier circle. I'm going to hit Follow Curve because, you know, why not? And just hit Animate Path. And now you can see if I hit play, let me pull this up for you, hit play, and it goes around. Round and around and around it goes. Where it stops, I don't know, probably where it started. All right. Now, second thing I want to do here is I want this to look ahead. So I can rotate this or try to play with something in here and make that work. I don't like doing that. I just want something to control it and make it simple. And you probably should too. So I'm going to go to Add. I'm going to say Empty. And I'm going to say, I don't know, Sphere. And that's pretty big, so I'll hit S, scale it down a little bit. And I'm just going to do the same thing I did with the camera to add it to our circle. So I'm going to go to Add Object Constraint, Follow Path, choose the path, Bezier circle, and I'll say Follow Curve and hit Animate Path. So now you can see that these go in lockstep with each other. La 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 la, round, 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 right? Great, wonderful. Now, I want this to be a little bit ahead of the camera. So all I need to do is just change this offset, push it negative, and now it'll be in front of the camera. So if I hit play, oops, forward, thank you very much. Okay, there it goes, round and around and around in front of the camera. All right, so let's make the camera stare at the object. To do that, I just hit the camera and I create a new object constraint. I say I add object constraint, I go to track 2, I'm going to choose the target, which in this case will be not the Bezier circle, it will be the empty. And then I will hit -Z, and the up axis will be Y. Boom. There we go. So now it goes around and around and around, and it follows the circle. So the sphere. So to show you what this is doing, if I change this offset, you'll see that the camera just tracks to the circle, right? To the sphere, I mean. So that's what it's doing. And I just want it to be a little bit ahead so that the camera is always looking ahead. Now, if I were to animate this and do a tunnel like this or a warp field like this, it would get really boring really fast, and you'd probably just turn off the video. But we're not going to do it. Luckily, we're going to make this cool. So I'm going to take this circle and I'm just going to go ahead and hit Tab, and I'm going to start moving these things around. So I can select this, I can hit G on the keyboard and I can pull that out. I can go here, hit G, pull that out. So I'm going to go mess this up, and I'm going to pause the video while I do that so you don't get bored, and I'll come back when it's all like cool and roller coastery looking. All right, here we go. Okay, so now we're back, and if I hit the camera, you can see that it now follows this cool little roller coastery path, and it goes around, and it's going to be pretty cool looking. Now, next step, which is probably step number, I don't know, 4. Hopefully you're counting, because I lost count. We're going to make our tunnel. So to do that, Blender gives us this really cool way of doing that. We can select our curve. We can go here to Object Data, as some of you say, or Object Data, or Data. And I can choose to do a few things first. First thing I'm going to do is resolution preview. I'm going to jack that up to 64. Resolution U, I'm going to jack that up to. And I'm going to hit this fill mode from half to full. Then I'm going to go down here to geometry. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say depth. I'm going to pull that up a bit. Say like point, let's see here. That's probably good. Like 0.6 or 8. And then resolution, I'll turn that up to maybe 24. And now I have a tunnel. Pretty cool, right? So if I hit 0 on the keyboard, you can see that I'm now inside my tunnel. And if I hit play, we're in a tunnel. We're getting that warp effect. Well, not really yet, but we're getting there, right? So this is a bit tight. Okay, the camera's a bit tight. I think we're probably about 50 millimeters right now. So I'm going to select the camera. And yep, I am. Focal length 50 millimeters. I'm going to turn that down to about 24 millimeters. And now I get a wider view. And it looks more like we could see more of the tunnel and the sides and everything. And this is just going to look cooler for our ultimate effect. Okay. So now it's time. Maybe this is step 5 or 6 or something. We're going to go ahead and give this a shader. So to do that, I'm going to select this. And I can go in the shading workspace here, but I really don't want to do that. I want to have the shading and the timeline in the same spot. So I'm just going to go here. When my mouse turns into a little crosshair sign, I'll click and I'm going to drag up. And it drags out another window. And then I'm going to click on this little thing here and change that to shader editor. So now what I can do is I can give this guy a shader. So I'm going to select Bezier circle, which let's just go ahead and call this tunnel. Oops, my caps lock key is on. Tunnel 01. All right, so there's our tunnel. And now I'm going to give it a new shader by just hitting new. And that gives us this principled shader. And we can't really see what's going on here because we're just in the regular, whatever this is, solid view. So let's go over here to rendered view. And you'll see that because we are in EEVEE, we're getting this real-time view. But it just looks kind of crappy and it's not really doing it for us. So for this effect, I do not need this principled shader. Now I know some people, oh my God, you can't plug anything else into Surface because that's just not going to work and everything's going to break and you're going to suck and your videos are all going to be bad. No, for this effect we can. Watch this. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go to Add, Texture. Why not? I'll just choose Brick Texture. What the hell? Right? Go to Color, Surface, and if I pull this out now, you can see that I have a texture. Ooh, look at that, a texture. A texture on our tunnel, right? But it's not cool looking. I mean, this isn't good. So let's add a vector. So we're gonna go Add. I'm gonna say Input, Texture Coordinate. I'm gonna use Generated, and I'm gonna say Vector. And yeah, that's not good either. So let's use UV. Ooh, that's much better, right? So we're going to use UV, plug it into vector. And now you'll see that it's giving us this cool effect. It is a brick texture. It's just kind of really stretched. So we're going to change that, fix that by adding a mapping node in here. So I'm going to go Add, Vector, Mapping. And if I put it over this little line here, it changes, gets bright. That means I can drop it. It drops and it maps correctly. And there we go. So all I have to do now is change one of these values and it changes this. In this case, I'm going to use X. I'm going to pull the X back. I'm going to go pretty far back and we're going to get a brick texture. Ooh. So if I hit 0 now, we're in our tunnel. All right. So now I can hit Control S every time and just save it so it doesn't crash on me. So cool. So we know it works. And you can just get a lot of mileage out of this. I mean, you can just go in here and play with these colors here and change this, and like your tunnel effect could easily be done, and you can just go and play this and have some kind of trippy, cool VJ effect and just be done. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go even further, and I'm going to show you the one that I showed you in the beginning of this video. So to do that, I'm going to get rid of brick texture. Brick texture, go bye-bye. Boom, bye-bye. Okay, so I'm going to go to Add. I'm going to go to Texture. I'm going to go to Image Texture, and I'm going to wire this guy up. Vector to vector, color to surface, and I'm going to hit Open. I'm going to load in a grid texture, and I'll show you the texture that I loaded in when I loaded in. Okay, so the grid texture that I loaded in just looks like this guy. And all it is just a texture I found on the internet of just a clear PNG file. I mean, I've had this for a long time. I honestly don't even remember where I found it, but I just had it on my hard drive. I said, oh, that would work. So you can just go into Photoshop and create something like this, and all you do is just cut out, you know what, I'll put this in the, I'll just throw this up on the website and put this in for you so you can download this in the comments section. All right, so if we look at our shader now, we see nothing really cool to look at. So in between color and surface, I'm going to add a control so we can see what this looks like. We're going to kind of make this better. So I'm going to go Add, Converter, Color Ramp, drop that in here. I'm going to switch the black with the white, and maybe I'll push the white up pretty far, give it some contrast. Now you can see that we have this grid. If I hit play, we're going through a grid tunnel. Wow, pretty nice. Trippy, wild, great. So we can also go ahead and scale this and use these controls to scale this back and make it more 1980s grid pattern. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and scale this in on the X, and I can scale it back on the Y and get that kind of grid. And I'm just going to eyeball it for now. I mean, you could go ahead and make this perfect if you want in your own. I'm just going to eyeball it and be fine, because I want this video to end at some point. All right, so there we go. So now we have that 1980s kind of grid look. But no 1980s grid look would be complete without making it that iridescent purple color. So I'm just going to go here to this white, make that 1980s purple color, and boom, there we go. You're saying, but Kev, I can't see the tunnel. I mean, I can see it, but I can't see it. Haha, here's where we get really cool with EEVEE. Now in Cycles, I could go and do this like transparent mix and do all this stuff, and it probably works in EEVEE too, but I found a really quick way to do it. It works, you can try it, you can play with it. All I do is I go to the shader. So I go here, I'm on a tunnel, I go to my material, I go down where it says under settings, blend mode, opaque. I change that to additive, and all of a sudden, ooh, that looks really cool. But it still doesn't look really cool because now it's all stupid and washed out. So I'm just going to go change that by going to World, taking this gray and turning it all the way down to black. And all of a sudden now we can see our tunnel, and we're following our tunnel, and it looks pretty cool. All right, pretty cool, trippy effect. We can also add a glow by turning on some of the EEVEE things. So if I go here to render, and I can turn on bloom, and I can turn on motion blur, and you don't really see anything with bloom yet because we're not really pumping any kind of power into this thing. To do so, we can do one of two things. We can change bloom intensity, and that's going to change anything hot in this scene is going to react to that, or we can tell the shader itself to get hotter. And there's a really cool trick you can do by hitting this color, and if you're on RGB, great, wonderful, but go to hue, saturation, and value and change value to anything but 1. I mean higher than 1. So I'm going to go to like 3, and now it starts glowing. Look at that, glow, glow, baby, glow. Look at that. Ooh, that's cool. I dig that. Oh yeah. All right, so that's fun. And so that we didn't even have to touch bloom for that trick, right? So there we go. So now we have this kind of cool 80s thing, and it's going a bit fast, right? So it's actually only at 100 frames right now. And I can show you that by going to the tunnel, going down to this object data, and going all the way down to path animation. And it says frames 100. Let's change that to the end frame, 250. So now it'll slow down a little bit and it'll do one revolution in 250 frames. All right, so that looks a bit better, right? So now we're actually going in and it looks more realistic and it's slower and cooler and you can actually see more. All right, very cool, great. So if nothing else, you could render this out now and be happy with it and have this cool 80s tunnel. But wait, there's more. We can actually go ahead and add something even cooler. We can add like energy effects to this. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this material and I'm going to call it grid shader. Cool, right? And now what I can do is I can take tunnel and duplicate it. So I'm going to go to tunnel. I'm going to hit Shift D and I'm going to hit enter. So that way it doesn't move. If I hit Shift D and tried to move it or scale it up here, no, bad move. That's just gonna move it and things are gonna suck for you. So I'm just gonna go to tunnel 01, right? So I'll just call this tunnel 02. And I can go and play with my depth, bevel depth. And I can take the bevel depth and put it up. And now I can get a much bigger tunnel over this. And it still follows and everything still works. And now what I can do is I can go to shader for this guy, tunnel 02, right, shader, grid shader. I can add a new shader, hit new. I can hit tab, I can hit assign. I can get rid of this guy, I don't need it. Oops, let me hit tab again. Let me get rid of grid shader. And now you'll see that we have this material 001. Now let's assign it. I'll hit tab again and I'll hit assign. Okay, select it. And now we have this. So let's get rid of this. See if I go to material here, you can see that it doesn't have that grid anymore. It's gone. And it's just really, really dark and it's just got this principled shader on it, right? So I can go ahead and call this energy. And we're going to make this energetic. So I'm going to get rid of principled shader, gone. And I'm going to go to add. I'm going to go to texture. I'm going to say Musgrave. I'm going to change FBM to ridged multifractal. I'm going to plug that into surface. And you see that we're getting something. But we still don't have the vector and everything set up. So let's go add, input, texture coordinate. I'll use generated this time, put it into vector, and I can use mapping now. So I'll go add, vector, mapping, throw that in there. And then I'm going to change the color in here. So I'm going to give it a color because this is kind of boring. So I'm going to add, converter, color ramp, throw it in, hit the white, and make it like blue. And there we go. So you're not seeing much yet, but you will. We're going to go ahead and change some values in here. So my scale, I'm going to scale this up to about, I don't know, 39.5. Detail, I'll do some more detail here. Dimension I'll leave alone. Lacunarity, I'll change that to, I don't know, 7.6 or something. Offset, I'll change that to 0.4. And gain, I don't know, I can play with that. It's not going to give me much. And then I can play with the color ramp and just kind of bring that back. I can add a new color in here. All right, I can make this one black. I can push this and I can push the value up over here to like value of, I don't know, 2. And now, if you see if I hit play, I get this kind of cool energy tunnel. And then I can also play with the scale a bit. And I'll just kind of find a happy place. And the last thing I want to do here is I want to add in something to control the dimensions. So I'm going to go to add. I'm going to go to input, layer weight, and I'm going to say facing I'm going to plug that into dimension. And now I get this kind of cool, weird, like real kind of energy effect. And then I can go ahead and start playing with this stuff. And every scene is going to be just a little bit different because of the way you create the size of your tunnel. But you'll see that we zero all this out. And here we start getting some really kind of trippy effect. And if we bring it just down a little bit more, maybe up the detail a little bit, you see that we get this really interesting kind of tunnel effect. And it's kind of giving us this somewhat energetic effect. And if I rotate these now, I start getting a really interesting kind of weird undulating energy effect. Now I can also pull this in a bit, and a little more black gives it just a little bit of more breakup. And you can see here that I'm getting this total energy thing happening, right? So that's really cool. So I'm kind of digging that. And what I can do is I can key the rotation here if I want. So I can go all the way back here to 1. I can go on, say, like the Y axis here for rotation, right click, and I could say insert single keyframe. And then I can go over here to 250, and I could say, I don't know, like I could keep it really, really tight. I don't know, like 30. Okay, insert single keyframe, and now you can see that I'll hit play, and it jumps. So you could do like a full-on 360 here. That might get a little crazy, right? So replace single keyframe, or it might not. Let's see what it does. That gives kind of a really crazy tunnel effect, really crazy energy effect, right? So you could probably even try like 180. It's not going to give you a perfect loop, but it all depends on what you want to do with this. If you want a perfect loop, then you can do that, and you can slow it down and add more frames to this, or you can keep playing with it. But this gives like a more, I don't know, slidersly kind of look. And let's see what happens at the end here. All right, I think with enough glow, I think that might not jump. But you can play with it and see. Again, like if you do 360, it'll be a perfect loop. It's up to you. However, I'm going to pump it up now. So I'm going to go to Bloom here, under EEVEE. I'm going to say Intensity 2. Take the threshold up a little bit. Maybe 4. I don't know. 8. And I'm getting a really wild kind of energetic effect now. And I can do that trick now where I can go on the shader and change it from opaque to additive. You see now that we can see the tunnel, the energy effect in the tunnel as we're cruising along. All right, so that's pretty cool. So we can now put both of these together by just turning this guy back on. All right. And now we have this really trippy tunnel effect. And we could go back here to tunnel 01 and turn that craziness down a bit. Because I'll go to tunnel here, and I'll turn this down. So I think this was really hot. I think we had this, so I can go to like 1.5, turn that down a bit, bring that down. And now if I turn this guy on again, you can see that we're mixing it pretty well together. And there we go. So now we got this really trippy tunnel effect going. I just tweak it to whatever you want. All right. So it looks like value of 2 here is good. These settings are good. And I'll leave it at that. And that looks pretty trippy, and I'll just leave it, and you can play with that and have fun with it. So to render this now, all we have to do is go to Output. And where it says PNG, I'm going to change that to FFmpeg. You could do a series of PNG, that's fine. I usually do, actually when I render out, I usually do the open EXR multi-layer, and then I have a bunch of layers that I bring into like Digital Fusion or Nuke or whatever. You can do that, but for this, I'm just going to do FFmpeg video. And I'm going to change encoding here to H.264 in MP4. Right? And if you open up encoding, you can see that that was plugged in. Output quality, let's see. Wow, it's quite a few. Screw it, I'll do lossless, why not? It'll be a bigger file, but it'll probably look better. And then I'll just tell it where to save it and render it out. So let's do render animation. I'm gonna pause the video and then we're gonna come back when it's done and all will be great. Okay, so here we are back and here's the animation and it's playing pretty well and it looks pretty cool. So you could always add more contrast and do whatever you want with it. It's up to you, but this is pretty much how you set something like this up and go ahead and animate it. And you can add this to your little arsenal of visual effects tricks and motion graphics stuff. All right, so if you got something out of this, hit like, subscribe, share it, hit that little bell notification, and all your dreams will come true. Or at least you'll see the next video that I make. All right, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.